Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Vikram, Krista, your Lyft has arrived.
Thank you so much.
At the beginning of the service, in any city, there's always an adjustment period.
As ride-hailing finally rolls out in Metro Vancouver, Uber and Lyft ask passengers for patience also.
She's in a lot of pain. This isn't right.
Demanding answers with his grandmother stuck in a drafty hallway at one of BC's most crowded hospitals. And
this was the trailer that our boat was on. This is where it was in our driveway every day, actually.
boat battle, how an attempt to sell it left a Surrey family high and dry.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. A bumpy road this morning as the world's biggest ride-hailing companies hit the streets of Vancouver. Yes, Uber and Lyft are finally here. Sort of. Today's launch raising questions about a lack of drivers and limited service areas.
And we do want to remind riders to be patient for the first few days and weeks, as there is an adjustment period for drivers and riders when we enter a new city.
Really what we're doing today is matching our operating region with the number of drivers that we have on the platform.
So right now, Lyft is only operating in parts of Vancouver, the PNE and YVR. Uber's initial service zone covers much of the Lower Mainland. So far, only the city of Vancouver has issued business licenses, which means passengers can only be picked up in Vancouver, but can be dropped off in other municipalities. More on that in a minute. First, the CBC's Tina Lovegreen puts ride-hailing to the test on day one.
Here I am with my colleague from Radio Canada, Benoit Ferrardini, and we're going to put it to the test. You're going to take a cab.
Traditional cab, yes.
And I'm going to take either a Lyft or an Uber, and we're going to compete to see who gets to our destination first. Okay, I've got my Uber app here, so I'll put that in.
And I'm calling a taxi.
Confirm pickup.
The Queenie Park.
Yeah, that looks like it's his cab. And mine still says 17 minutes away.
After some time, the request just expired.
Okay, so it's given up on me. Is that what just happened?
No drivers to be found, so I decided to try the Lyft app.
3 minutes, okay. Am I your first Lyft ride?
Not really.
Not really? Okay.
Tough getting an Uber, but the company says it's because there aren't enough drivers because of those Class 4 license requirements.
It creates barriers for people who would be otherwise safe drivers, but who now have to go through a many month-long process.
My driver says he didn't find the test too hard.
You aced your test.
Yes.
But because of the lack of drivers, Lyft has decided to limit its operations to just parts of Vancouver and the airport.
We are going to be looking to expand our region as soon as we have more and more drivers on the platform.
Whereas Uber is servicing a much bigger area. Both say they will eventually expand, but right now they're competing with each other for drivers.
We're almost there.
I arrived 10 minutes later than Benoit, but who paid more?
We both agreed we were going to tip 15%. My total with the tip came to $14.69.
And my total is $17.88. So you saved $3, I saved 10 minutes.
Yes, but let's consider that this is the first day and the prices, could change depending on demand. So you will pay that price no matter how busy it is, but this price could go up depending on how many people are asking for a ride-hailing car.
And you may have more drivers in the future and also less waiting. You don't know.
And the companies do say they're still ironing out the details.
Let's try this again in like a month on a rainy day on a Saturday night. What do you say?
Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
The launch of ride-hailing was welcome news to many potential passengers, but the companies, as you heard, are still hiring drivers and can't meet the demand just yet. Uber is starting off with a larger presence in Metro Vancouver, including Coquitlam, Delta, and North and West Vancouver. Lyft is limiting operations to the core of Vancouver, Dunbar Street to the west, Victoria Drive to the east, 41st Avenue to the south as boundaries. It'll also serve the PNE and Vancouver International Airport. Now, Surrey's Mayor Doug McCallum says he still does not support ride-hailing, but the provincial government says individual municipalities do not have the power to block it. Meanwhile, Vancouver International Airport is all set for ride-hailing.
We are really excited to have ride-up services at YVR. We've been planning for it for quite some time, and we think it's a really great complement to our other services such as taxis and Canada Line.
The airport has already incorporated ride-hailing into all its signage, with drop-off locations on departures level and pickup locations at arrivals at both domestic and international parts of the airport. Well, a man is fed up that his elderly grandmother has had to spend several days in the hallway of Abbotsford Regional Hospital. It has the dubious distinction of being one of the most crowded hospitals in BC. As Dan Burrett reports, the government says it's working to expand the ER.
I understand. It's not a comfy place to be at any age, but Dale Regier says the hallways at Abbotsford Regional Hospital are no place for his grandmother Eva. On Monday, the day after her 96th birthday, she slipped and fell.
She's got a broken pelvis. She's in a lot of pain. This isn't right.
An ambulance whisked her to the hospital, but she has since spent several days crammed in beside other patients with little privacy.
In front of the emergency entrance doors.
Regier praises the nurses, doctors, and other staff working in the cramped conditions.
I feel bad for them. Selfishly, I care about my grandma here right now because she's in the middle of this chaos. She needs some dignity for her personal space, for a washroom, just even have a shower.
We're gridlocked in the emergency department.
The BC Nurses Union says overcrowding is a constant at the hospital.
When you have patients in the hallway, there is a higher risk of communicable disease or exposure to spread. There's no sinks, so there's hand washing becomes problematic. There's often no bathrooms.
Regier says staff have told him they are working on moving his grandmother to a room. Fraser Health says it has spoken with Eva Regier and her family, but says she is in a bed, quote, in the appropriate unit at this time. Last September, the province announced work to expand Abbotsford's emergency department, and Fraser Health says that's set to be done by next summer. Regier hopes the matriarch of his family gets the help she needs as soon as possible.
My children just love their great-grandma.
Great-grandchildren she hopes to see soon at home. Dan Burrett, CBC News, Vancouver.
CBC News has obtained footage of the dramatic incident that led to a police chase, resulting in the 2017 murder of an Abbotsford police officer. The dashcam footage of a civilian witness captures killer Oscar Arfman holding a rifle twice. The audio has been removed from the recording as part of a ruling from the BC Supreme Court judge who found Arfman guilty of first-degree murder of Constable John Davidson. The video shows witness Lawrence Seifert leaving a drive-through at an Abbotsford mall complex. He turns the corner to see Arfman pointing a gun at a blue truck. Seifert turns his car around and sees Arfman again holding the rifle. After Arfman leaves the complex in a black Mustang, Seifert tails him for several blocks before Arfman drives back into the complex. Moments later, he shot Davidson in a nearby parking lot. Arfman will be sentenced next month. A Surrey family is out $17,000 after a deal to sell their boat went sideways. The family claims it was working with a boat broker when the vessel vanished, only to turn up in the possession of a stranger. Eric Rankin of our CBC Vancouver Impact Unit has been looking into their boat battle.
This was the trailer that our boat was on.
For Matt and Justine Brown, this empty trailer is a constant reminder of their frustration and ongoing fight to get this boat back. Last summer, they entrusted the 2007 Bayliner to a Surrey boat broker to be sold for $17,000. But a few weeks later, Breakwater Marine was raided by the RCMP in a major fraud investigation, and the Browns' Bayliner had vanished.
They're just completely devastated and just bewildered on how this could have happened.
Breakwater owner Aaron Fell has not been charged and denies any criminal wrongdoing. In a text to the Browns in November, he claimed their boat had been stolen by a disgruntled customer just before the raid. We owed him $8,000 for a consignment, wrote Fell, and the next thing we knew, he had hooked up and drove away with your boat. Armed with a name, the Browns tracked down their boat in Pitt Meadows, near the man's home.
Called the RCMP right away. I said, I found my boat, come out here and help me.
But the man produced this bill of sale claiming he paid for the Bayliner in trade and cash. However, the manufacture date was wrong by 2 years, the hull serial number off by several characters. Still, he'd used the document to get a pleasure craft license with the corrected serial number through Transport Canada, even though the Browns had red flagged the number with the regulator months before. The only thing they got back was their trailer, because it was still registered in their name through ICBC.
Well, it's shocking. It's mind-boggling.
Ridge Meadows RCMP say, unfortunately, 2 separate parties have reasonable documentation showing ownership and suggested the dispute be resolved through a civil court process. But the Browns say they can't afford a lawyer. We contacted the man who now possesses the Bayliner. He didn't want to talk.
Okay, all right, so you're declining comment. I get it.
The Browns have a message for him.
I would just hope that he would find the kindness in his heart to do the right thing.
Eric Rankin, CBC News, Surrey.
If you've been to court recently for a motor vehicle accident-related case, you likely know about trials getting bumped or postponed. The sheer volume of delays, however, may surprise you. As Belle Peary of CBC Vancouver's Impact Team reports, the number of hit an all-time high last year, and accident victims are pointing the finger at one main culprit.
Daily physio exercises are about the extent of Romika Reddy's ability to move around. A car accident 3 years ago left her with various soft tissue injuries.
Sometimes I'll get like shooting spasms going up my back.
But what pains her the most are delays in getting her ICBC case heard in court. When she showed up in October, her trial was put off for 8 months.
We were told there was a lot of other people waiting as well to see if they got assigned a judge.
Too many cases like Reddy's and too few judges to hear them has caused a spike in the number of trials postponed. Personal injury lawyers blame ICBC for a strain on the system.
The problem is that over the last year, ICBC has been making unreasonably low settlement offers, which don't anywhere nearly come close to making people whole for what they've lost.
Last year across the province, a record 140 BC Supreme Court trials were bumped to later dates, compared to only 33 the year before. Lawyers and their clients blame that increase on the scope of ICBC cases being forced to trial. The BC Supreme Court is short 7 judges, but critics say more judicial appointments won't come close to fixing the problem. ICBC has its own data on cases going to court.
Less than 1% actually go into the court process. And lawyers that are representing injured people, their demands have increased in terms of monetary demands by nearly 40% over the last 3 years.
Caught in the middle, those waiting for a resolution.
Not having enough judges, it's a lame excuse. I think if ICBC gave a fair settlement, this would not have ended up for a court date.
Reddy's case is now scheduled to be heard in June.
It's people's lives that are, completely changing, completely going backwards over something that's not their fault.
Belle Peary, CBC News, Surrey.
Tofino and Ucluelet have limited access tonight to the rest of the island because of damage on Highway 4. A rock blast tore apart the roadway when a rock came down and compromised an existing retaining wall. Temporary access for cars is available on the highway at Kennedy Pass until 8 o'clock tonight. The highway will reopen tomorrow from 8 a.m. to noon, and ultimately, crews hope to have a portable bridge in place for Sunday, allowing for single-lane alternating traffic. The closure means store shelves are starting to look pretty bare. The local co-op grocery store manager says a truck carrying stock didn't get through today, and that means available produce is limited. The affected portion is east of the southern boundary of Pacific Rim National Park. A cold snap in northern BC has dealt a blow to the region's spruce beetle population, potentially slowing down one of the worst outbreaks this province has seen. Tree-eating spruce beetles usually prepare for winter temperatures, but experts say this cold front hit so quickly they didn't get the chance. An entomologist with the province says it won't wipe out the population entirely, but likely did knock back their advance. To the latest on the coronavirus now. There are no confirmed cases of the virus here in BC. The BC Centre for Disease Control says several people have been screened, but none have tested positive. Meanwhile, the death toll is rising in China as health officials confirm 41 people have died. Sasha Petrusek is in China and has the latest on an escalating crisis in that country.
In a muddy field outside Wuhan, an army of bulldozers is breaking ground, racing to build a 1,000-bed hospital to treat victims of the coronavirus, aiming to finish it in about a week. Here, the urgency is clear. Inside the quarantine zone, hospitals are low on supplies and struggling to cope. One startling video, which appeared briefly online before Chinese censors removed it, shows a Wuhan hospital hallway. Bodies of the dead lie under sheets next to patients being treated. It was shot by a woman who says she's a nurse. Those living inside the quarantine zone aren't sure what to do, like Isaac Taylor.
I'm worried personally because I don't even know if I have the virus, and the hospitals look like they're chaotic and flooded with people, and it seems almost like it would be more dangerous to go into the hospital than to not.
Locking down millions, blocking trains, planes, and roads is extreme and unprecedented, and some experts say it won't stop the virus because many had already left the area.
Several 100,000 people have already, seeing what's coming, have abandoned or left the particular provinces and gone to other parts of China. It may have only spread the condition further.
But the governor of Hubei province, where Wuhan is, says he hopes people understand the enormous challenge. It was a tough decision, he says, but the outbreak had reached a critical stage. That sense of urgency now shrouds all of China. Disneyland in Shanghai is closed to crowds, as is Beijing's Forbidden City. And across the country, public celebrations of Lunar New Year's Eve, normally loud and colorful, were canceled and dismantled.
CBC's Sasha Petrusek reporting from China tonight. Meanwhile, the Chinese community in Prince George is making an effort to help those affected in Wuhan, China. Vicki Larson is from Wuhan and is spearheading fundraising efforts. So far, masks, gloves, and medical supplies have been purchased with the hope of shipping it off to those in need. Larson says it's especially hard with Chinese New Year, a time when families gather to celebrate.
Very scary and very sad just because so many people got sick and they have no access to the medical attention. And what I try to do is raise some funds so we can buy more face masks and gloves so we can help.
Larson says Marquee International Foods in Prince George is also collecting donations. Well, China is stepping up its efforts, meantime, to curb the outbreak of a new coronavirus with mass quarantine measures. Closer to home, a second person in the U.S. has now been diagnosed with the dangerous virus. Health officials say a woman in Chicago developed symptoms days after returning from China. CBC Health reporter Vic Adopia reports.
The patient is a Chicago area woman in her 60s in stable condition and isolated at a local hospital.
She again is clinically doing well.
Chicago health officials say the woman was in Wuhan last month. She reported no symptoms of the coronavirus at the time of her return to the U.S. on January 13th.
She started to develop some low-grade symptoms. She really had very little travel outside the home during that time period. And she called ahead and did seek care about 3 to 4 days after that.
A team from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control is on its way to Chicago to help investigate. The CDC is also looking into dozens of suspected cases in 22 states. It's a similar situation in Ontario. People reporting symptoms, so far, all have turned out negative.
We have a whole flow chart on people under investigation. We're not saying don't come forward if you have doubts. If you have doubts, ask.
Toronto is the same size as Chicago with an even greater diverse population mix. Hospitals here are anticipating they'll likely see cases of the new coronavirus.
What's happening right now is not unexpected. I think people get very nervous in the light of a lack of information or things changing so rapidly in the media and elsewhere. That is what happens when you have an emerging infectious disease.
If anything, the Chicago woman's experience demonstrates the limitations of airports screening for people infected with the coronavirus. And while the risk of infections remains low in Canada, travelers returning from China are still being encouraged to maintain good hand and respiratory hygiene. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
Donald Trump addressed an important segment of his base today. The U.S. president speaking to thousands of anti-abortion protesters at the annual March for Life in Washington, D.C. As CBC's Katie Simpson reports, the anti-abortion movement and other conservative groups are key to Trump's re-election strategy.
The March for Life is the largest anti-abortion protest of its kind anywhere in the world. Though this year's gathering could easily be mistaken for one of President Donald Trump's rallies.
It's wonderful that we have the support of the President of the United States.
Trump is now the first ever sitting president to address the crowd in person, a move aimed at motivating his deeply conservative base at a time when he is under intense scrutiny at his impeachment trial.
And today, as President of the United States, I am truly proud to stand with you.
Donald Trump has actually been the most pro-life president that we've had. He has protected life more than any other president has.
I'll be voting for him this year, that's for sure.
Do you vote based on this issue?
Completely on this issue.
Trump's appointment of 2 Supreme Court justices is the biggest win for this crowd, as they hope the new additions will vote along conservative lines. That will be tested in March when an abortion case comes before the court.
The Supreme Court, more than it's ever been, has become more and more conservative in an activist way.
Pro-choice advocates worry a Trump re-election would mean even more conservative justices. It's a motivating factor for both sides in the upcoming election. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Well, 2 new hybrid electric ferries floated past downtown Victoria today as final work begins to get them ready to join the BC Ferries fleet. The Island-class ships are designed to be able to operate on electric power only, reducing emissions and underwater noise. Recommissioning and crew training are needed before they can take on passengers, though. They're expected to be fully deployed by mid-2020. All right, time for a look at the forecast now. A lot going on today, a little earthquake and that storm that rolled through here this morning.
Exactly. This thunderstorm activity, which I will be honest, I did not put in my forecast yesterday, so apologies to anyone that experienced it and were caught unawares. But take a look at this. We had a line of storms going all the way across from southern Vancouver Island right through places like New West, Coquitlam, Poco. It was everywhere over there. Lots of people saying that they were caught off guard. And take a look. It's what it looked like on the ground. This was definitely some periods of heavy rain. We had people telling us that we had some hail with this as well, and definitely caught a lot of people off guard. And we are not going to be looking at those conditions anytime soon, visiting us once again. I would say into the future, we're going to be back to just a regular old showery pattern. But yeah, we had a 4.5 magnitude earthquake 50 kilometers to the southeast of Ucluelet earlier on this afternoon. It was quite shallow, so people across the island felt it, and even reports of people here in Vancouver feeling that as well. Now, our weekend is upon us, and in classic fashion, there is going to be a little bit of rain to be dealing with, but it is not going to be a washout weekend by any means. Saturday, expect some rain first thing in the morning, but by the afternoon, I do believe we're going to see that sun come out. And with Sunday for the Lunar New Year parade, that is going to be a day where you're probably going to want to have an umbrella handy if you are intending to go out to it. Again, not a washout type of a day, but best to be prepared. All the way across the province, still dealing with showers along the coast, and we have some snow in for the interior as well that's worth mentioning, and places in the far northeast are going to be quite nice. But take a look at our 5-day forecast here. Temperatures still consistently above seasonal for the next little while. A few sunny breaks expected on Sunday, and if all goes well, I think Monday is going to follow suit with that, but it'll be brief. We've been into a long month of rain here in January, and even as the month is coming to an end, we're still going to be seeing some pretty steady showers right until the very bitter end.
All right, we will take brief. Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
Well, with Lunar New Year upon us, thousands of families in BC will be celebrating this weekend. The most commonly heard greeting is Gong Hei Fat Choi, but is it always the right thing to say? The CBC's Leanne Young breaks it down for us.
Gong Hei Fat Choi. Gong Hei Fat Choi. Gong Hei Fat Choi.
Gong Xi Fa Cai.
You hear it everywhere this time of year, congratulating or wishing someone wealth and prosperity. But there are a couple of things to know about the common greeting.
Gong Hei Fa Cai, or Gong Xi Fa Cai, is Chinese, and it's not just the Chinese who celebrate Lunar New Year. Many Asian cultures do, like Koreans and Vietnamese. And then there's the fact that Gong Hei Fa Cai is Cantonese.
Many of us brand China as this one monolithic entity, but it has taken so many different forms throughout history.
And the diaspora is vastly different. Some of us speak Cantonese, others Mandarin, others maybe Hokkien.
If you're able, find out, because it's a sign of respect that you know what language and you want to communicate and express your blessings and well wishes with them in the proper dialect.
And there are a multitude of greetings worthy of the red and gold. Chinese New Year greetings are like poetry, typically always in 4 characters, like Gat Cheng Yu Yi, meaning good luck and happiness. Or there's Fuk Lam Mun, wishing you 5 blessings for a wealthy, healthy, and virtuous long life. Or you could just say Happy New Year. That's San Lin Fai Lok in Cantonese, or Xing Nian Kuai Le in Mandarin.
You can also do it in English, just because it's if pronunciation might be an issue for you, say it in English.
Or even in French.
Bonne année durera, 新年快樂。
新年快樂，萬事如意，身體健康，年年有餘。
新年快樂，萬事如意。
Wishing you and your family 新年快樂，心想事成，鼠年如意。Happy Year of the Rat. For CBC Vancouver, I'm Leanne Young.
And we hope you can join CBC Vancouver at the Chinatown Parade this weekend. It's happening Sunday at 11 o'clock. For now, thanks for watching online. Have a great evening.